Welcome to Dark Loops Productions, Surviving the Last of Us. I'm Dr. Scott Jordan, a.k.a. Zombie Scotty, cognitive psychologist, philosopher at Illinois State University.
And I'm Leandra Parris, aka Doom Raider, Associate Dean for Diversity and Inclusion for School of Ed at William & Mary.
Fantastic. And tonight, we've come together to celebrate the season finale, Episode 9, Look for the Light. Joining us this evening in the podcast is this amazing crew of people. I'm going to ask each to introduce yourself and tell the audience a little something about what you do, and I'll just go around my screen, and I'll start with Brittany.
Hi, I'm Brittany. I am a licensed clinical professional counselor, a very long-winded way to say a therapist. And I'm also the co-host of the Popcorn Psychology podcast, in which, kind of similar to this, is we pick something in culture, movies, TV shows, and we talk about things of mental health that present in the movie. So it's kind of a way of like getting your education, kind of getting your vegetables like in, you know, some nice sweet, a sweet sauce or something. So we're trying to feed you something good, but trying to trick you a little bit into it.
The Trojan horse method.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Maisha.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maisha Orthy. I'm a first-year graduate student at Illinois State University. I'm studying cognitive and experimental psychology, and I love everything about pop culture, anime, movies, books, and everything. So I'm really glad to be here as part of this team.
You're fantastic. How about you, Benjamin?
My name is Benjamin Taitz. I am a registered psychological associate in California, which means I am almost a psychologist. I'm almost, like half a psychologist, almost there. I am finishing my doctorate this year during my dissertation on using geek therapy to build rapport. So I'm very geeky, and I am the co-host of the podcast called Mental Health Quest, the Therapist's Office and Beyond, where we try to educate people about mental health and how do you find mental services and what is the different diagnoses and treatments look like, just to kind of decrease that stigma. And then I did start another podcast, but it died kind of quickly, and I will try to revive it later, but it's called My Hero Therapy, where I will try to psychoanalyze the My Hero Academia anime to learn how we can all be heroes in real life, but I will revive it later when I'm done with my dissertation. So
yeah, dissertation first, man. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's awesome. How about you, Hanna?
Hi, my name is Hanna Espinoza. I am another co-host of Popcorn Psychology, and I also own my own private practice in the Chicagoland area.
Fantastic. And then returning to the show this evening, the one, the only, the man you fan, Dr. Tom Buller. Tom, please tell everybody a little something about who you are and what you do.
My name is Tom Buller. I'm a professor of philosophy at Illinois State University.
Fantastic. So here's the format of Surviving the Last of Us. Favorite line, favorite scene, favorite character. Everybody picks one, and then we'll all talk about it and take it from there. So I'm going to ask my co-host for the series, Dr. Leandra Parris, to start us off this evening. Favorite line, favorite scene, favorite character.
Oh, y'all. This whole that is a really hard question. But I will say I have two, and I'm trying to at the last minute pick between the two. But I'm going to go with the one that made me almost stand up off the couch, which is when Joel finally decides to go for it, and he's going through the hospital and he's killing everyone. And there's that great music in the background.
Oh, Lord.
And let me explain why this is my favorite scene. That scene in the game took me 4 hours.
Oh my God.
And this guy goes and does it in 3 minutes. But I always like when they do a little bit of video game-esque camera work, and I like the determination, and he has made a decision and he's going to stick with that decision. He's not going to waver. He's got a cool soundtrack. And I know there's a lot more depth in other parts of the episode that I know others will probably speak to, but that particular scene really it's everything led to that decision. This entire season has led to this decision that he's making. And I just thought it was so well done. And he's such a good shot. And that scene where he picks up like the automatic, like, oh man, yeah, I have no idea. My little video game heart.
So was
on
that
fire.
There was no soundtrack like that in the game?
A little bit. I mean,
bit.
some similar. It's a similar music, yeah. But
that
it was not
soundtrack
like
was
that.
rocking because
The
it was a
soundtrack-
slower tune right behind all the action. It
Yes.
cut out the action sound. It was amazing.
I love it. I mean, because the soundtrack when I was playing was me screaming MF over and over and over again as I die. So
Yeah.
but I just love the resolve. I just love whether you agree with this decision or not. He stuck with it.
So I love that scene. I have plenty to say about that scene, but I'm going to ask my colleagues here. Who else wanted to say something about that scene? Jump on in.
I think it was really interesting to see Joel in like full force because we've kind of gotten glimpses here and there of what he's capable of. So I think the show did a good job of only weaving that through. So when he really finally went for it and was like full rampage mode, it felt almost like jarring, like how efficient and like cold-blooded he was in this pursuit. And I do appreciate that the show kind of held on to that until this moment. So it felt really brutal and like wild to see him just take down one person after another in like rapid succession. No mercy, headshots, everybody done.
Takes the doctor out, does not shoot the women in the room.
Yeah, that was
I thought and so he is, I mean, I'm going to use the word sexist, but I'm not trying to use it in a judgy way. What I'm saying is he's a dude, right? In the world of Gaia, he's a drone, and he's not going to kill a woman like that. I mean, he does kill women later in the show for sure. But I just thought it was interesting that he did not shoot them. Not that I wanted him to, not that he should have. I just found it that they wrote it that way and directed it that way.
Well, I wonder if he would have shot the doctor if the doctor hadn't
pulled a scalpel,
but also said like, I am going between you. Because I think also what's different about the nurses is they immediately like hands up, like acquiesce to him. And they didn't try to. I think if they would have gotten between him and Ellie, he would have definitely taken them out as well.
So look, here's what that whole scene begs. This is a moral philosophy thought experiment, right? In other words, you've got a person who theoretically can save the human species. She's not asked for her consent, which I thought was an interesting writing choice. It's probably the same in the game, right? Right. So if they had asked her consent, but they decided they weren't gonna because they didn't think that her life was worth asking for consent. All right. So Joel decides he's going to protect her. This is a typical thought experiment in philosophy. Do you do the thing that ends up with more people dead or fewer people dead? So if that's a non-starter here, I'll drop it and maybe we'll come back to it later. But I love the moral conundrum. I'm going to call it what the world will call it, a moral conundrum, where Joel saves the life of one person and simultaneously sacrifices potentially the lives of thousands of others. Any questions or comments? Or
I do want to like pull one thing out of that though before we like jump in, because this is the point of the whole show. It's like the most divisive ending to a video game I've ever experienced. The way Marlene presents it, the idea of not asking for her consent was as a mercy, so that she didn't know what was coming. So from their perspective, Marlene, I don't think sees it as like, I'm not giving her a choice. It's more, I don't want her scared, so I'm going to go ahead. And so it's like, she doesn't know what's coming. She doesn't have any pain. There's no anxiety. Like, and that's different than like, I don't care about your life, because I don't think Marlene would agree with that statement.
No, you're right. I mean, or at least she told herself that.
Yes. I'm not saying I agree with that rationalization, but that's definitely.
Well, I think an important thing to consider there is the way that Marlene has convinced herself of that rationalization, because people can convince themselves of just about anything. And the more you have that rationalization, especially the nicer that rationalization sounds, like, oh, it's mercy, the easier it is for you to be disinhibited from the thing that you also know is maybe not so great. I work in forensic psychology, and rationalization is like everywhere. Like I just spent a whole hour and a half group. Like, why did you think that was okay? And I'm not saying that Marlene is engaging in criminal thinking here, at least per se, but it is so interesting to see, because you see that rationalization in other aspects of the show too, that, well, I did this because it's right, or because this is, safe, or because it's good, or, all those kinds of things. And it's just so fascinating to see how we can, as humans, convince ourselves of just about anything, and we might not think that it will do it. And I remember when I watched you guys' first episode of this podcast, and Dr. Parris, you were talking about, like, would you kill the kid or whatever? No, but like, what I mean is, it's very interesting how, if we were in that position, we don't obviously know right now how would we respond, but we have the potential to convince ourselves to do what in our world now would be considered heinous. But also, morals are relative, and they are changed by the situation that we're in, and our experiences. And so in that situation, maybe it is morally right to not ask Ellie. I don't know. I'm not a philosopher in the room. I'll leave that to you guys. But it's in that environment, maybe to her that was the moral thing. So I just think it's really fascinating how that goes through.
I knew that story was going to come back.
You knew it was going to haunt you, didn't you?
I knew someone was going to bring that up today.
We're just going to have to give you a whole, let you gaslight yourself about, I was doing it for the kids' good later on at the end of the episode.
Does Joel know what Ellie would choose?
I think he likes to think he does, but from my understanding of Joel throughout the series is his idea of what Ellie wants is not always what Ellie wants, but he likes to think he knows what's best also. So I mean, really, who's more guilty of this, Marlene or Joel? Because Joel has done some things also to, like, not give her that autonomy in other areas of the show too. So
yeah, that was a writing choice, right? Because even in the game, that's why I asked about the game, because if they had actually told Ellie the stakes, that would have been a sort of choice point for her. And that would have been just as dramatic, us watching Joel deal with her, say, yes, I'll do it. Right. So I think the writing thing was, if we don't ask for consent, we get to let Joel go nuts. In other words, we release Joel of that thing that he may have seen, and he just goes nuts. And again, that's a writing choice, and I enjoyed the choice they made. But
yeah, I think he's a wimp.
Yeah, see, now you're gonna come at my man Joel.
I told you.
I think that Joel thinks that he knows what he thinks Ellie should do, because he's looking at Ellie as a child. So if he does know, he knows that she won't be able to make that decision. That would be what I would be thinking as a parent. And so I feel like because he's viewing her that way, him preserving her life is the answer that he would give, of course, to the daughter that he lost, but also just in general. And so I really feel like I'm on Joel's side. Also, side note, why did they tell him that she was going to die? They could have just said, we're going to do the surgery. But also, they could have just said, we're going to do the surgery. We haven't done something like this. We don't know how it's going to go. The end.
Or he could have just told him the same lie of, like, we're just going to run some tests on her. We will have you come see her once she's, like, I don't know, like, out of the testing room or whatever. Like, I think, I don't know, I'm assuming that Marlene underestimated Joel's capacity for connecting to Ellie. I think he saw she saw him, which I think is fair. That's what he was like at the beginning of the show, as like this cold mercenary type, which he was. And so it makes me curious how much Marlene was even aware of his history of having a kid, and if that would have made him too much of a liability to take her, yada yada. So I think, and also I know that he wasn't meant to take her too. Like it was supposed to be Marlene. So I think Marlene also underestimated his ability to love her, and maybe didn't even think he'd give a shit, like if her life was on the line, because he is presented like, I think what we see across the show, like Tommy's wife and stuff, like there is sort of a mythos around Joel as like this brutal dude. So I think unfortunately, Marlene also was not watching the show with us, and so she didn't see his character arc.
That was her fault. She had all the chances to watch the show.
Got to keep up.
I will say, I feel like she also wanted. I think at least the way it comes off in this show, it's almost like she wanted him to agree with her to make her feel better. Like if there's somebody else in the world that's going to understand what she's going through, maybe it's this dude who's been with this person. And I just want to bring it back because it's a big question about whether or not Joel like took away her consent. And I will just point out that if Joel really, and I agree with you, Hannah, I think it was more like, you don't know because you're a kid. Because if he truly thought that Ellie would have chose her own life, he wouldn't have lied to her. So, like does that make, like, he would not have like lied at the end if he actually thought that Ellie would have chosen to stay alive. So I think you're right, Hannah, that he was like, you know what, that maybe that's the choice that you would make, but you're not old enough to make that decision for yourself.
And he doesn't trust her with that information, which I think is a lot.
He also doesn't want her to die.
And he doesn't also want her to be mad at him, probably too.
Regardless of what she would have chose, he didn't want her to go. So that, again, what they've done so well in this show is not make any decision one bit of logic, right? It's just a whole mess of psychologic. And anything else on this scene? Tom, you had your mouth wide open. What were you concerned about?
I was just aghast at the at the moralizing, but I want to hear what Maisha has to say.
Okay, about this scene. This is actually one of my favorite scenes because I was actually watching this episode this morning. So when I was watching this, I was like, I never played the game, but I actually knew how the ending will go. So I already got the spoilers and stuff. So I was kind of prepared for this, but like, if I have to pick a side, I don't know how to do it honestly, but like, I'll probably in Team Joel, I think. Because it's because like I kind of understand where he's coming from, because like I'm gonna tell which scene is my favorite, and that then I think I can connected with it a bit more. I feel like Joel had this father figure kind of love towards Ellie, and I think it's true. And when it comes to love, I don't think any logic works. When it comes to like into the parental love, or like when you feel connection towards someone. Like my favorite scene, should I talk about my
go ahead right into it. Good segue.
So my favorite scene when like they were talking about like when Joel was talking about like killing himself and he missed the shot, and Ellie was like, time heals everything, and Joel says like, no, it's like it's not the time that healed me. So at that point you kind of know that like Joel thinks of Ellie as his daughter now. And like when it comes to that point, like you can't really like nothing works on your mind except for saving that person. So if I was in Joel's place, probably I would have done the same. Probably I wouldn't have been this brutal, but like it makes sense. Like I can't really hate Joel for this case. Like I know it's morally wrong, it's morally very wrong, but I cannot really not take his side in this case. It's just like not rational. It's not a rational decision at all, but it is what he did.
It is what it was. You're absolutely right. No, I love it. Anyone else on that scene where it wasn't the time?
I love it. First of all, you said it is what it is, because isn't that what what's her face says when she's about to right before the bloater comes out of the ground and she's trying to kill Sam and Henry. Like, it is what it is.
Yep.
And I think she would have probably agreed with Joel too. Like, I think she's someone who would have been like, you need to go get that girl because that's your person.
Yeah.
And I do love the point about time. Like, we always talk about grief and how like time isn't what makes it better. It's all the things that fill in around it. It's all the ways that you make new meaning. And Joel in that moment has made new meaning to his life. And to have to turn around and give that up within less than, I'm going to say 24 hours, helps you understand how he ended up there. So that whole scene, just the way it was acted and the tears and the look on her face of like, holy crap, I did a thing. I don't know. It was a very touching, but also made me like, oh, here it comes.
Damn, here it comes. It was beautiful. Even though you watch it a second time and you kind of can start to feel that it was written, if that makes any sense, right? It doesn't matter. It's so damn well acted, right? Every time you watch it, you're going to tear up. I'm going to cheat and just go to my favorite line because it's right before that, and we can continue this whole conversation. But I love it when she says to him, no, we got to finish, and then I'll go anywhere you want. I just love that we got to do this now, and then we're together. And it's a weird together because it's not a couple in the traditional sense of a couple. It's not a father and a daughter because she's a killer too, and he knows it, right? This is a team. If he's got to go in a shit situation with anyone, it's going to be her now. And, and she's kind of his daughter and Tess, all wrapped up into one. And I thought I didn't see that coming in the script. And I thought that was fantastic. That was not a mic drop, y'all. Someone say something.
In those scenes, I felt kind of, I don't know. I think Bella Ramsey does such a great job of projecting a lot of complexity on their face where I'm never quite sure what their internal world is. And in those scenes, I found myself, because I watched it they'll come up on TikTok like a bajillion times now. Everybody is editing them. And so when I've seen them, I think sometimes I feel relief coming from them of like feeling connected and like how profound that is. And sometimes I feel anxiety that they're feeling pressure to be something to Joel. Like, I think I found that kind of my sort of favorite scenes were like the scenes where just Joel's trying to connect with her in a very like middle-aged dad way. And it's
all right,
like,
that's not beat up on middle-aged dads.
Not landing. Like just not landing.
Yeah.
And I think in those scenes, I am keeping in mind that she just went through something very traumatic. And so I think they do a good job of showing like her being a bit dissociative and kind of like all that stuff. And so, it makes me curious how much of that withdrawing in those moments, especially like after the hospital, is her feeling beholden to this place that Joel has put her now, that it makes me, I don't know, I'm curious of how much it is like feeling anxiety or feeling like beholden to him versus genuinely feeling bonded to him, which I think that show does an interesting job where in the beginning I could really feel her wanting to bond with him for the most of the show. And then this flip happened that made me genuinely uneasy by the end, which was really good writing wise. And I don't know.
Yeah. I think she realizes he's a worthless pack of shit. I think she suspects that he's lying to her, and
I agree with that.
I think she's playing a long game and is going to take him out at the first opportunity.
This is not exactly what I said before he came on air.
I do love your antagonism. I can always respect an antagonistic voice in a bunch.
So you got two different takes on her dissociative bits, and I thought that was a great way to talk about it, right? She's in a very unsettled space, and what they've done so well in this show is use words the way people do, which they don't mean much. They just kind of float around on top of complex psychological spaces. And then when you're in a space like that, sometimes you really can't even talk, right? And someone's begging you to talk, so you get a few words out. And I thought the acting was just perfect, spot on. I don't think she plans to kill Joel at the first chance she has.
Definitely not.
But I think she's also a little worn. And I think sometimes, like Benjamin, you're working on your dissertation right now. You know how it gets where it's like, you're just so worn. That
was me yesterday.
You're just so worn, and you just, then it doesn't feel like there's a space to go. You got to finish, but you don't feel like, I don't know if I'm making any sense to you guys, but she was dead end psychological space there. She wants to be with Joel. She's antagonized. Like, I just thought it was incredible acting, writing, and it's all there, as they've been doing all season.
I love that this show starts with her constantly doing bad jokes to him, constantly talking at him, constantly, and he's giving her one-word answers. And now the shoe has flipped and it's on the other foot, and like he can't take it. It's like I think that parallel of they've flipped. She's become the rock. She's he's kind of become the one who needs something. And I think that is a really interesting thing in terms of the story, but also thinking of where Ellie is when this happens. Here she has this dude who locked her up and wants to make her his wife. And now you've got this other dude who now wants you to be his dead daughter. Like that is a level of cognitive and all of the trauma is going to break. Again, she's trying to make new meaning, right? You can't make new meaning while you're still experiencing the trauma, but she's trying. And I just think I'm with you, Brittany. I was cringing a few times because I'm like, oh, Joel's kind of coming off like a creep now. Yeah. And it largely is because of how she was reacting to him.
Yeah, she wasn't bantering with him. And so it had a weird energy of him being like a tryhard. And yeah, I think now that you're saying that, I mean, this poor girl, like all the adults in her life that are supposed to take care of her have all been putting her in like a placeholder position where she isn't worthwhile on her own. She's only worthwhile as much as she contributes to someone else's need, with Marlene the Fireflies, David, Fedra, now Joel. And I think what feels genuinely sad about the Joel thing though, is I don't think Joel is so buried under his lack of self-awareness. Like, I think even him shooting up the hospital and getting her, like, he has no awareness of the emotionality and the trauma that's driving him. And I think even in these scenes with Ellie at the end, I think what's so hard is he doesn't see what he's doing to her too. And that feels, I think, genuinely heartbreaking, because I think he is trying to put his like true dad hat on and be that for her, but he's missing that like last kind of connection piece that's pretty vital.
Call it honesty.
So, go ahead.
Like if he had been honest with her,
honest, transparent, even if he at the very end was like, I lied to you initially in the truck because I was freaking out, or he could have definitely saved it then. And he did what a lot of people do, which is they double down because they don't know how to dig themselves out of a hole and not realize that they're just making it worse and worse, which I mean, I'm a child therapist and a family therapist. I see that happen in real life.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, this dynamic between Ellie and Joel, it's very super intense because of they're each trying to get something from the other, but they don't know how to A, express it, and B, get it. And it's really heartbreaking in so many different places. And like every episode, I'm just like, just the audience, I don't know if they can see me, but I'm mouth agape. But I'm gonna make a reference here, and so Brittany and Hannah are on the podcast with their friend Ben Stover, and I'm gonna pull a Ben Stover here and talk about Batman. Because
come on. Wow, never be free.
No, because in this situation, it's like Batman and Robin when Robin turns into Nightwing, because Batman's always trying to have a certain type of relationship, and every time he tries to make it deeper, he doesn't know how, so he fucks it up. And Robin also tries to have a different kind of relationship, but doesn't know how. And so at the end, Robin just decides, I'm going to be my own person. And that's where I see Ellie here. Is she's deciding, as much as I want this kind of connection with you, I'm also me.
Exactly.
So, thank you. And you guys can tell Ben Stover that he's always right about Batman.
And the me that she becomes needed him and still needs him. So I get that he looked creepy in this one, and I would argue that's a writing choice, and so we can only talk about it in terms of how they wrote it to make him look that needy as a way to accentuating her growth. And I get it. And at the same time, as Benjamin said, they're both getting something out of each other. I was a little uncomfortable with them writing Joel that needy, to be honest. But maybe that's because I'm a middle-aged man and I don't think that those kind of relationships are inevitably going to lead to that kind of thing. But Leandra, in the game, did they play him that way at the end?
So for the, if you don't know, like, I replay each piece after I watch the episode. And when I watched the episode, was like, this is not how I remember this feeling. It did not feel like this. I think some of it is that Ellie is a little bit more talkative in the game. You're playing her at this point, like you're following him. So I think maybe you just don't notice she's not talking. He does not come off quite the same way. Like the intonation's different. The way it's a little bit more like, yeah, I'm telling you the truth. And it's a little bit more like, yeah, I think my daughter would have liked you, it's I don't know, it comes off different, but Joel is different by this point in the game.
Yeah.
And so that did kind of throw me where, like, this is a pivotal moment that sets up the second game.
Yeah.
And Joel coming off as needy, I feel like it's going to change what they do, or at least how he
I love it.
Next.
All right, well, right.
Maybe he didn't mean to come off that way. Maybe it was meant to come off as stoic, and we just are reading Bella's amazing body language. And like, I'm not sure.
I think we got a pretty good take on how it was written, right?
The words are the same, though. The words are the same.
Yeah, exactly.
But why wouldn't she get fed up with him? I mean, if she's becoming increasingly empowered and she's becoming more skillful, and
why would she? Well, my question is, you ask why wouldn't she? My question is, why would she? I mean, if she's becoming a killer, she respects killers, right? I don't know. There's no not necessary reason for her to think he's a problem. And for me, it's kind of inconsistent with the respect that she's garnered for him over the course of the season. I mean,
but that's a respect predicated on his strength and his ability. And now, if he's becoming more needy and lacks her skills and sophistication, I mean, why can't we see it as her maturity, her development now? And
because there's no grace there, my friend. There's no grace. I mean, just because someone comes old and frail, if we start to treat them like they're useless, I mean, that's about us. That shows that we have a lack of grace, not that they're useless. I mean, they're the ones.
I suppose that's like the scene when he doesn't kill the nurses. It's a nice bit of good old fashioned morality.
I actually would argue that his neediness appeals to her in a way, because throughout the entire show, she wants to be needed. She wants to be, useful. She wants to be helpful, and she wants to be seen as someone who can be of use. And so him being more needy, I think, in a way, kind of validates that for her, or at least kind of affirms that like, yes, I need you. You have, something to offer, whatever that might be. I think that's not going to drive her away. That's going to pull her closer, I think.
Well, I think going back to Maisha's point, she loves him, and then it's just a mess. And then you know how it is when you love someone and then things change. How do you deal with that mess, right? You got to be with them differently now. And I think that's kind of what she's struggling with there, is how I'm different now. How do I be with him now? And I do love him. Not, it's a mess, as we've been saying for the season.
I mean, I also think it's too early to tell. because Ellie has gone through a series of traumas, intense traumas. She's had to make really tough choices that I'm sure deeply challenge who she is to herself. And then she's finally getting something she's probably been wanting her whole life. And then maybe it's different than what she thought it would be like. And so I think there's such a mess there right now for her. I think it's too soon to even, I feel it's too soon for me to even make a judgment about where it'll go from here, because there's a lot of sorting out to happen. You know, we're fresh from so much shit. and she's 14, right? Like, I also want to be mindful that she's 14 and she grew up in a crazy world and such deeply horrible things have just happened to her. And someone that she trusts just lied to her and she knows it. Something fishy happened, you know? And I would say I've worked with kids with like attachment issues and things like that. And so I'd be really interested if she was like a real person in my office, like how this would mess with her or not mess with her attachment to Joel. Like, it can kind of be all over the place when you haven't grown up with a secure parental figure. So I think I feel like there's so much going on. I couldn't really even speculate about where it's going to go from here. It could go in any direction. And also I think too, with his neediness, I think what his problem is, if he was in my office, is I think he's trying to be the version of him that was a father to Sarah. And I think he would need some guidance of like, Ellie's a very different kid than Sarah. You can't just like copy paste that to this. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit her. It doesn't fit you anymore. Like, it's just going to feel weird. And it is weird. And I think the show shows us that it's weird. You know, like, boggle is not the time. You know, maybe you could have boggled with Sarah, but not now. You know what I mean? So I think that's where he's like rusty, I think, in being a parent. And I think that's part of the cringiness, is I think he's just really rusty. Like, so all the stuff when he was like, you're girly, but that's not bad. Like, that's what I mean. Like, that felt very human to me. Not in like a weird way, but just in like a, oh, you're embarrassing me, shut up kind of way, which is very dad-like. So maybe he's nailing it.
Well, something he hasn't done for 20 plus years. Yep. Well, now that hearing everyone talk, you know, the intensity between the two of them at the end, for me, is indicative of love. Dude, you can't lie to me. You know, in other words, those are the people you usually get maddest at, right? Those are the people you trust the most. And so again, fantastic writing, fantastic acting. Okay. Anyone else? Favorite line, favorite scene, favorite character? We've had Maisha's, we had Leandra's, we've had mine.
I can hear Hannah thinking.
You're not wrong. Well, it feels like it's changed since we've talked about so many other scenes. It feels like it's changed a little bit. So I do feel like I don't know. I don't know that I know, because what I was going to say is the scene where she gets the pun book back out and she seems, and we see a hint of how she's been throughout the entire season. And again, as we know, people who are really traumatized, in order for them to come out at all, it has to be something that's very comfortable, something that's very safe, something that they know they'll know how he'll respond. It's a pun. Like, we know how Joel's going to respond. This isn't going to be something that's going to blow up, you know, the situation in any way. Also, she won't have to talk about anything hard because they're using the pun book. So that's my favorite. That was my favorite. That was my favorite scene. And maybe I do just want to stick with that scene, actually, because I do feel like they will have time to figure it out in some way of what this is going to look like. But I think Brittany and everyone else who's kind of said, we just don't know. Like, we just don't know enough. It's been so soon. Everything has happened so fast. I do worry that the choice that Joel made for her will lead to her being alone. Which is what she fears the most. And maybe there's no chance for that. Maybe that was always going to happen. Like, maybe that was always going to be the way that it would end up in this world. But I do wonder, it does feel like he did make that choice. because he will die. I mean, he will die. Like he's like he will get older. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, like so I do worry that he made that decision for her, and that she will end up being alone. But also, I don't think there's any way in hell he could have made any other decision, especially if you want him to pick between humanity and this one person that he cares about. Get the fuck out of here. He's seen the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
And the worst situation they could be in. Why would he ever? He always would have picked one person. He always would have picked Ellie.
Well, he picked, one person over humanity at the very beginning of the whole season. His whole everything that he's done is really him picking one person over humanity. I actually really like this scene with the pun book also, because it just felt so pure. It felt very genuine to me, because that's always been her way of kind of needling him, and that's been that kind of banter that they have, and to show that again, it just feels like, okay, yes, hell has broken loose and everything, but like we can still have puns and whatnot. And it reminded me of the episode where we saw her relationship with Riley, and when she first got the pun book and they were reading it to each other. To me, all the scenes with the puns, but especially that one with Riley and this one at the end, tells me that this is how she tries to express affection. If she's reading puns to you, it's because she cares about you. Because how else does she know how to express affection and caring? She grew up in what amounts to a military, dictatorship camp thing. Like she doesn't know that. She's never had that kind of experience of expressing affection in a normal air quote way. So I really liked this scene because it was so genuine. This was her love language. It's puns. And honestly, I wish I had someone to read me puns too.
Read me some puns. So
you can have my husband. My husband is all about the puns. He's all yours.
Well,
every day.
Jokes all here. Dad jokes rule, man. Let's just say that pun scene, let me just make sure I got my chronology right. That took place after the whole creepy bit, correct? Where he was looking needy, and then finally they settled into the pun bit, and then they got captured.
It's the neediness, then the pun, then captured, and then neediness again.
See,
in fact, the puns are kind of why they got caught off guard, because she distracted him.
Yeah, well, the thing about that then is, not to go systems theory, but I mean, it's a system that's oscillating, and they've been through this very tense moment, and then that tensity releases, and you get, okay, do the pun book. And he's the one who says, you know what I could go for now? Some puns. And he doesn't even know why he's saying it, but he knows he's got to reduce the tension a bit.
He knows.
You think so?
He's got
in their relationship
to maintain. Like
he knows that that's their relationship. He knows.
Yeah. That. I do wonder, because I love the point that you make, Hanna, about like she's kind of starting to come through a little bit there. Like she's kind of starting to recover. And I think when I was thinking about what happens at the end, so far she hasn't really been betrayed. Like David doesn't lie to her, Marlene doesn't lie to her, the guy at Fedra doesn't lie to her, Joel and Tess didn't lie to her. And I think this betrayal is and you guys know child attachment theory, like betrayal is a whole different ball game when it comes to like rebuilding those things. And so I'm just kind of hoping that they kind of play into that. Like it's different when you're betrayed by someone who's supposed to protect you, and your definition of protection may not be the same. The other thing, I think I lost it because I was looking at your beautiful faces and just got distracted.
Well, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say Hannah's comment about Joel lying to her and sort of feeling guilt. I can buy that as a reason why she would no longer feel she could be with Joel. I just don't know if we can bring enough rationalization to the moment to say, you know, because look, if he hadn't done it, she'd be dead. She wouldn't be around to be mad at him, right? But you can't muster the cognition to have that, particularly this moment, and I don't even know if ever. So she's going to be stuck when she finds out, which I think she will. She's going to be stuck with this guilt of having been able to save, and Joel robbed her of it, and that might carry her through. And you know, if they could perhaps get some couples therapy, you know, one
Call
might
it couples therapy. It's family therapy.
It's killis therapy, killatine therapy, right? Because let's face it, if Joel hadn't done it, she'd be dead. I mean, it's so on the part of the issue is moot, but it's not because it's psychology, and she's going to argue he betrayed her.
Well, I think what's tough is she's at that horrible age where you're such a rigid thinker, and teenagers do not do well with being lied to, I think, especially. No. And I think it's a tough age for this to have happened at for her. And then I don't know, I think I'll be interested in how it shakes out, because especially now that they're going to Wyoming, right, with Tommy and all of them, and it's such like a safe haven. I could see, if I was in her shoes, I could see me trying to push down that part of me that feels suspicious, because I'm finally safe. I'm finally in like a town. I finally have a family, you know, all those things that feel so good. And I think that part of her is going to be like pecking at her head, you know, trying to rationalize it. And I think what really sucks is about him lying, and you guys kind of mentioned this, is that she doesn't have any context for the situation. And so that's going to let this niggly feeling like perpetuate in ways that could get really out of hand. And that part really sucks. I mean, I think all Joel needs to say is they were cut your head open and they didn't even shave your head. So like they didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, they didn't have Grey's Anatomy anymore at this time. They couldn't have learned these things.
I mean, these people haven't learned anything new since 2003.
Exactly.
I mean, how do we even know that person was a surgeon? What are the chances that they have a brain surgeon and he's one of the people who was left over? Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, they probably had someone who was like, you know, had some first aid training, you know, or in their past life was like a school nurse or something like that, and that's the closest they got to a medical professional. So
yeah, I think the probability of there being a trained doctor with those skills is probably equal to the probability of there being giraffes. So
listen, those giraffes are great. I told you.
That's fair.
Well, actually, I owe you
Africa didn't suffer from the infected because the giraffes, you know, cured everybody.
But I checked. There's a nice you know, making of that I watched, and to my great joy and surprise, it's a real giraffe. I thought I
told you that tongue.
You did. I missed. So that's one of my favorite scenes. My other favorite scene, and I don't think I've ever said this sentence before, was when whoever it was shot and killed the woman who had just given birth.
Marlene.
Yeah, Marlene.
I thought that had a moral, emotional honesty to it.
Yeah, Hannah and I were debating, because we watched it together, about is it a selfish of Marlene not to do it, because she's prioritizing her emotional state over the true agony of her friend.
Yeah.
So I'm glad she did it, because I would have felt horrible if she hadn't.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting that they had that scene in this episode. And they also had the scene with Ellie explaining to Joel about her relationship in the mall and how she and her girlfriend got bit. And then she said, we figured we'd just sit here and go lose our minds together. So for them, there was no killing each other. There was no killing to be happening. It was, they were just going to let go. Of course, I guess only one of them could do killing in that case. But she had a different kind of view until, of course, the other girl turned, and then she did what she did.
I loved it. I tried to imagine if my best friend were begging me for something, how I could even deny that. And I think you're right. I think Marlene turns away, and you have to turn around and do it. Like you have to. Like there's no.
Yeah.
My one complaint is that man did not listen to her. He did not cover Ellie's ears.
No.
He just
Not at
stood there
all.
like a dumbass.
Oh, that was dreadful.
Like a dude.
Yeah.
I was so worried about the baby's ears.
No.
Yeah.
I
didn't
do like
think
the way.
I didn't
ahead,
think the
Tom.
baby was very good either.
I think it was,
Typecasting.
here's what I'll say. The baby was appropriately small. I can't stand in shows when there's a baby that just popped out and it's
Yeah.
like 4 months old.
Yeah, I
And
didn't
this
get-
baby did.
I didn't get the
literally
baby's
just-
motivation.
Tom.
You're critiquing the
Look,
baby's acting.
Typecasting.
That baby popped out. It was like, I don't care what you're doing, mama. I'm coming out. I mean, literally, she rolled
Yeah.
off that little. I know we can't call them zombies, but the infected or whatever, and just
Yeah.
looks down and there's a baby.
There's a baby.
And Ellie's like, hello. Listen,
I really appreciated the way they did the scene with the shooting, because once you decide to do something you really, really, really don't want to do, you have to just commit to it emotionally and just move and do it and not let yourself get caught up in reflection at all. And that's exactly how they did it. And
And
But
Joel
why would you be reluctant?
because
this was
Tom,
her best friend.
But you cash that out. Your emotional guilt pangs against what that poor woman is going to befall.
Because
Why can you not?
emotions don't work that way. Like, you can still have those conflicting emotions. Like, she still loves her best friend, even
Yeah.
though she knows what's going to happen. I mean, to
But
go with what
can't
Leandra was
you
saying,
put-
is like, can't
you
do that?
put that emotion into the moral thing, and you're weighing up the
Mhm.
price of your emotions against the life?
But I think she did that. It just took like 2
It
minutes.
took. If
Well, if she'd have had an hour,
like an eternity to her.
Yeah.
and if she'd have had an hour to chill out, then she could have done it calmly. But she didn't have an hour to chill out. She had a little bit of time before she was going to turn, and so she had to do it quickly and get it done. But I like if she had been able to talk it out with someone further and sit there for a while, I think she would have been calm and come to the sort of emotional, moral space you're talking about, Tom. I just think in the moment there's too much of a phase transition going on to really get a coherent state other than just block it off emotionally and get it done. That was my vibe, and that's why I appreciated how they did it, because I'm not going to say that's how I'd do it, but that's how I'd do it.
Tom, what do you think morally of Marlene not raising Ellie as her friend asked her and just dumping her off in a federal orphanage?
Dreadful.
Exactly.
Mm.
Can I
I
add something?
have
Please, Maisha.
difficulty remembering which character's which, but I think I'd stick with my one-word answer.
Maisha, you were going to say something?
Yeah, this kind of reminded me of like Marlene dropping off like LA to a different place instead of raising by herself. It's kind of reminded me of Dumbledore from Harry Potter. It's like he also like put Harry into the Dursleys, even if he knows that Dursleys are not a good person and Harry is gonna have a tough life, but he did that anyway. So Marlene kind of reminds me of Dumbledore in some way. She is better than him, but in some way kind of reminds me of him, that she kind of knew that like Ellie is gonna die. Still, she raised her, and he like, I don't know, like put her through all this just to like be a sacrifice at the end. And that was kind of the point of Dumbledore too, to make Harry a sacrifice at the end. So yeah, I just felt that it kind of relates.
Yeah, I would agree.
Absolutely.
If you know that you're going to sacrifice this person, why would you raise them yourself and form that bond with them? Because then you're not going to be able to do it. I mean, she had that much trouble in that 5 seconds to kill her best friend. If she raised Ellie as a daughter, and then knowing, okay, at some point in the future, I'm going to have to kill this girl. Yeah, she, again, to go back to the rationalization that we started this episode off with, is when we first met Marlene and Ellie, she was saying, I put you in the federal place because that was where you would be safest or whatever. She rationalized it. I wanted you to be able to have some kind of stability or whatever, however you call that stability. It's still a rationalization, but it made Marlene feel better with her decision to to kill Ellie, and that's exactly what Dumbledore said. Oh, I wanted you to have a chance at a normal life before I, sacrifice you on an altar. Like she, both of them knew the environments that they were putting the kids into, but in order for them to go through with it, they had to rationalize. They had to kind of convince themselves that, what, it's for the greater good and all that. And yeah.
Yep.
I mean, sorry, whoever was going.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think your point about Marlene, like really truly thinking that Ellie was eventually going to die is true. Like, she doesn't know that she's immune until the whole thing with Riley goes down. So it's not like she's making that choice. But the point about like the environment, I think, is dead on, because she even says to Joel, like, she's gonna get tore up by infected. She's gonna die. Like, they all die, just like Kathleen said. Kids die all the time.
And so did that guy.
I agree with that. Like,
David,
that, like, I have to distance myself from this because this is someone that I would literally be too attached to do my job, right? And I think that's a really good point that I hadn't thought of until you brought that up, Maisha. So thank you.
I mean, I don't know if this is heretical, but when I think back on the series, the two standout episodes for me are the ones with the two men and their relationship, and then that lovely one with Ellie and Riley. And I mean, could it be that they're overshadowing the whole, whatever they're called, zombie thing, that in fact those are more indicative and more important images and narratives of human nature than all the rest of it?
I think I also loved both of those episodes where they showed the Bill and Ted, Bob and Ted. No,
Bill and Frank.
Yeah, Bill and Frank. No, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Bill and Frank. God, I'm gonna go nuts here. And Ellie and Riley. I think the biggest importance of those episodes is showing that, like, yes, the world has gone to shit and hell in a handbasket, but it is still possible to have even small moments of joy and comfort and normalcy. I mean, with Ellie and Riley going on this date to this, mall and, exploring and everything, that just felt like normal. Like, that's like what two teenagers would do on a date. They would go to this abandoned place and, let me show you the 4 or 5 wonders of the mall. That's a normal thing. And I think it's important to see that in a lot of post-apocalyptic kind of shows and movies they try to kind of hint at that like normalcy can still happen. It's just a little bit different. And I felt when I saw that first episode with Bill and Frank. Why can't I get those right? I don't know. I especially love that episode so much because like I did not see it coming. I saw, I started watching the episode and, he's like, oh, he's in the hole and everything. I was like, oh, okay, well, whatever. Like, he comes, oh, he let him into his house to get dinner. Oh, okay. Like, I kept thinking he's going to kill him later. I did not see the kiss coming. I did not see everything else coming, but it hit me so viscerally because if that is not a representation of what all humans want, especially in the darkest of times, we want that kind of companionship and comfort and love. I mean, I'm not living through an apocalypse, but God, if I don't want that relationship. Like, that is bagels right there.
But I suppose that's my point, is that had substance and honesty and integrity that put the shooting up mushroom people into the shade.
So I'm going to say that I think the show had an incredibly robust emotional, psychological palette. And I think for me, the stuff that they showed these characters doing was stuff that I believe would happen in this context. I didn't feel they were trying to tell me how to be. So in those episodes, I didn't feel they were saying this is the best. I thought this is an aspect of being human. I thought this last episode, these are some of the harsh, cruel aspects of being. I just thought someone got really creative with the human condition and splashed it out over a whole bunch of episodes. And I never felt anything was judgy. And for me, that's the accomplishment of good writing is I didn't see the authors. I saw the characters and I saw their motives. So, the other side of the Venn diagram with those two episodes just makes all the other stuff for me more intense, more visceral, and dare I say, more real. And so I thought the whole series was kind of a masterclass in how you try to capture the human condition.
It was a masterclass in making me cry.
Real.
Almost every episode, I was just like, why? Like they would bring people in, you would form this attachment to these people, really, like the Sam episode. Did you or did you not cry?
3 times.
Yeah, exactly.
Which one is Sam?
The
little boy.
Kid, the little boy.
Oh no, he was weak.
Dr. Levity over here. I just had this Leandra, you were talking about that scene at the end where Joel goes on a rampage. The thing I noticed about that scene was it looked like a video game. You know how in video games I don't play a lot of them, but you do something, then you find stuff and you take it, right? And then you do something, you find more stuff and
when
you
he
take
picked
it.
up the magazines, I was like,
yes.
Classic.
Video game stuff, click, click, click. What's the matter?
They gave him more magazines than they gave me. So listen.
He was playing the easy version.
Maybe
but
you didn't,
think, so you brought
your bullets correctly.
Look, but you also get to make like those cocktail things that burn and like a bomb made out of sorry, my light's moving. Nails, and anyway, I did not use my resources wisely, but I did. I know we're talking about the love, and I love that we're talking about Ellie and Riley and Bill and Frank and their love, and Joel and Marlene's resistance to love, and how that's all come to head in this show, which I find to be really, really beautiful. And I think because you brought up the game, and we usually do a little bit of the game.
Yeah, let's just do that now. Go ahead.
I want to bring up one thing that drives me nuts. So, Benjamin, you brought up the very first episode for our podcast. I talked about how, in a game we're in a zombie apocalypse, I made the decision to just kill a kid for their supplies, and everyone in my group was aghast at me, I made some sort of horrible decision. And so everyone automatically assumes that I'm all for killing Ellie because that's a line, right? Let me explain. When I made the decision to kill the kid, I knew that I was going to get those supplies. I knew this was going to save lives. Absolutely, 100% knew that this was going to save a life. And not killing the child would put that at risk. So I had very big certainty on the positive net outcome of that decision. When it comes to saving Ellie, did we sit and talk about is this an actually work?
Yeah.
Have we done some tests with some other thing to let us know? Do we need everything out of her brain? Can we not just biopsy one part? Where's the rest of the information? And in the game, you have this brief moment where no one's hounding you and shooting your ass up, and you find a recorder. If you're very good and you're like me and you don't leave a room until you've checked everything, you find a recorder with a surgeon who is actually a surgeon. Lo and behold, is leaving notes. And in the notes, he says, just like previous subjects. So she's not the only one. And that to me changes everything.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's not
killing
fair.
her is not a certain net gain.
Right.
And I think there should be a little bit of a pause, a conversation about that.
A conversation about killing children. Got it.
And that was
In this
that
case,
was a writing choice.
not in my case. In my case, it was clearly the right choice. And there was no hesitation. But in this one, I when I was playing the game, I was like, Joel, let her die, until I found that recorder. And when we found the recorder and I heard that, I was like, oh, okay, now I got you. But originally I was like, nope, she needs to go.
That's just good writing, man. All right. And the thing is, they chose not to put that in this script. And what that did was make the choices for Joel binary as hell. And then now they've put Ellie in this unresolvable situation where she's alive because someone did something she's going to hate him for doing. And a great drama, but it would have been a little easier maybe for the audience to deal with if they had some of that information.
Well, and I'll say for Joel, he makes the decision to do it before he hears that. So it for him was a binary decision in the game.
He's Joel.
Like he hears that past the point of no return.
Yeah.
So it's not like it would have changed anything, but it did change my mind. And it made me think more about how do we determine net gain for humanity? Is that actually going to happen with her? Is it? He talks about it's a cure. So what do you mean a cure? Do you mean a vaccine? Like a cure means you could go give this to a bunch of people already infected and they would come back? Because then that makes everything that we just did, killing all of them, completely wrong.
Right.
So I don't like, there's like a lot of, I don't want to moralize it, but at the same time, it's like you can't make this decision and make this other decision and still be okay with everything.
Mm-hmm. Well, because it's not that simple. Because what they really should have said, honestly, is she's an anomaly. We're going to experiment on her to try to figure out why she's an anomaly and see if we can do anything with that information.
Yeah.
And that's the real truth. And that's horrendous because then you have to admit that you're going to experiment on a child for the good of humanity. And that's a very different flavor.
The potential good of humanity.
The potential.
Yeah.
They don't even know if it'll work.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love it. It generated this amazing conversation, and I'm sure I'm going to be stuck in this conversation a few more times because I just love these questions, right?
Also, they said they're going to be coming out with another season, so
yeah.
2. They said they're going to make the second story into.
They're going to have to.
Yeah.
Maybe by that time it will have played the first season.
Will you be out of the
basement? Get out.
Please.
I'll get out. It's so
you need to start over and make sure you have more than 2 bullets by this point.
Yeah, I do, man.
That's what I do. But I will say, like, I am really excited to see where they go. I did not like the second game as much, but it did have more of what I really liked about this show. So I'm excited to see what they do with it, because this decision that we've just been discussing and all of the love and all of the resistance to love and what does it mean to be absolute when your decisions in terms of morality comes to a head in a beautiful, spectacular way that cost me, 20 hours of my life. So.
All right, then. Any final comments about this episode? All right, then. Why don't we go ahead and tell everyone where they can find us on social media? And again, we'll just go around on my screen and we'll start with Brittain.
Oh, well, you can find Popcorn Psychology anywhere you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, wherever. And you can find us on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook at Popcorn Psychology, and Twitter at popcorn_psych. Fantastic.
How about you, Maisha?
Well, I don't actually have any public profile that well, so I don't know. I rather not share about that.
She's not trying to be found.
There you go. How about you, Benjamin?
You can find me through the Mental Health Quest podcast, anywhere podcasts are found, on Facebook and Twitter at MHQ Podcast. Yes, that's it.
Excellent. How about you, Hanna?
Same as what Brittany said.
Same as what Brittany said. There you go. I'm going to do it that way, Scott. Okay. How about you, Tom?
Same as Maisha. You can't find me anywhere. So.
All righty then. How about you, Leandra?
You can find me on Twitter at Paris Leandra, at Paris Leandra. And that's kind of it.
Well, thank you very much. You can find all episodes of Surviving the Last of Us on Dark Loops Productions on YouTube. You can also type either one of those phrases, Dark Loops Productions or Surviving the Last of Us, into the Google machine. and our podcast will show up wherever they are. Leandra, it's been an absolute blast podcasting the show with you this season. Thank you much for joining me.
Thank you.
And it's been a blast. And I'll get out of that basement someday, I promise. And the rest of you, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's been a delightful conversation. So there it is. From all of us to all of you, big hugs. And remember, okay.
Okay.
All right, bye-bye.